And we are live.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sundi Richard, and I'm here with Virtually Connecting, and we are connecting with a conference in Coventry in the UK. I don't know the official title, actually, but it's about disruption and open learning. So I'll let the on-site folks talk about that a little bit more, but I'm going to go around and let the virtual folks quickly introduce themselves. Alan, do you want to start?
Sure thing. Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning from here. Alan Levine. I'm in central Canada in Saskatchewan, and happy to be talking to everybody here, and excited to learn what's going on in Coventry.
Christian, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon from Hamburg, Germany. My name is Christian. I'm the Education and Science Advisor to Wikimedia and also a private consultant and many other things. Glad to be here, finally, virtually connecting again.
Great. Maha?
I'm Maha Beli from the American University in Cairo, and I'm also the co-founder of Virtually Connecting. And I really wish I was there, because last time me and Catherine were in Coventry, we were together. And at OER 19, I was with Suzanne and Leo. Leo was also in Coventry, actually, right?
Yeah. Teresa?
Hi, sorry, I'm Teresa McKinnon. I'm in Warwick, which is not very far from Coventry. In fact, I work at the next institution along at the University of Warwick, and I'm delighted to be able to join you remotely because I couldn't actually be physically with you today. It's great to see so many great open friends there.
Great. And so the on-site folks, can you tell us who you are and where you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Zamora, and we're at Coventry at the moment at the Disruptive Media Learning Lab. And I'll pass the mic to Leo.
Hi, I'm Leo, and I work in London at UCL. I'm also a student at the Open University. And so this event was really exciting for me. It's all about learning on the open web. So really up my street.
Hi everyone. Sorry. I have a backache, so I've been standing. So yeah, I traveled from London, and this event is really, really good. I've really enjoyed the session so far. Really good discussions around openness, and with a critical look. So I think maybe we can talk about that later on.
Yes.
But it's not just about like celebrating technology and openness. It's also digging deeper into the ethical issues around openness, like there was this presentation by Wendy talking about the the labor behind open production, and also your talk was very interesting, talking about connected learning and thinking about all the different dimensions. So yeah, I guess it's a very inspiring conversation that I think will continue in other venues.
Suzanne, I don't think you said your name.
Oh, sorry, Suzanne. Yeah.
Hi everyone, it's Catherine Cronin from Galway, and my voice is not the best, so I'll try not to do too much talking. And really enjoying the event as well, learning with and on the open web, I think is the name of it.
And / with the web.
/with the open web, yes. And specifically I was here to do a workshop with Mia, on behalf of Mia, Maha, and myself around Equity Unbound. We did that this morning. But yeah, it's been a great day.
It sure has. So far, so good. Is there any questions you guys want to throw out?
Well, if I can throw my hat into the ring, I'm particularly interested in what we, as I chair the Open Education SIG, what we can do to forward the discussions that certainly I've had with many of you in the past, and certainly through Twitter. And I was very interested to watch your presentation on Periscope this morning as well, to address this issue around ownership and the open web, and for how much longer are we going to have the freedoms that we currently have, and how are we going to protect them? What could we do as an Open Ed SIG? As you perhaps know, we organise webinars and we record those and capture them, and we like to try and throw things into the open discussion that help to support movement forward. And I know I've already entreated Catherine to perhaps present our next webinar. So leave it till your voice has got better. So how can we take these next steps? Is it, as I'm looking at a whole load of things around ownership, discussions around unpaid labour, discussions around critical digital literacies, the fixed copyright campaign, open educational practice, and how do we make that more the norm and extend that and perhaps get rid of some of the fears around it. What's any suggestions here as to how we take that forward? I mean, we could have a series of discussions leading up perhaps to OER 19, but any suggestions you have, I shall be writing them down and taking them back to the committee. So
interesting. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Before we start to answer it, I just want to also say that Sam Ahern has arrived and is sitting next to us. Do you want to just say an introduction to what you do and where you are usually?
Oh, Christ. Yeah. So I'm at UCL. I actually work in the same team as Leo. Hi, Maha.
Hi.
So I produce some OER. I do lots of around data. So very much into making sure that people have critical data literacy, playground projects. And yeah, I'm a Mozilla, I'm a mentor for the Open Leaders Program. And yeah, working open is good. It comes with a whole bunch of interesting problems. But I think if enough people are around the table and everybody is around the table, then it becomes better. It's when you only have a select few around the table that it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that and just sort of pick up on some of Teresa's questions or get them going, so to speak. I think I'm thinking right now about the Equity Unbound work as being a small little example of work around inclusion, work that's always reaching but never able to be realized 100%, but that sort of that constant effort is going to be a part of some of the answers to the questions that you laid out for us in such an articulate way, Teresa. And then I also just wanted to say that one of the things I'm picking up from today is that the rhetoric of open is kind of coming to the magical thinking around open in a rhetorical sense is sort of expiring at this stage. And that's just in the air. I feel that sense of a shift and a need to start to, not that we don't need to throw away that word, nothing, I don't mean that, but I just mean that we all kind of understand that it doesn't make an easy formulate, it is not equative with freedom in any kind of simple way, and that there's some really pressing issues of social justice that are becoming more and more in the front and center, and we need to address as practitioners, as educators, as designers, etc. So now I'm going to just pass it on to everyone else's thoughts.
Jim Broom, he mentioned in the morning like how important it is to have like a set of shared values. So I think going back to that, the value, what's the value of openness, going back to that. So I think that's part of the discussion as well.
I mean, even to technology and what people can access in the format they can access is an issue for social justice. If there are a crazy amount of mobile phones in Africa in some of the poorest areas, but they don't have the bandwidth for some things, so a lot has to be tech savvy. So even when we are sharing content and we want to share good content and we want to get the word out, actually we think about the medium that we're pushing it out in, and whether it is accessible. And then you've got to be wary of the potential colonialism of the content you're putting out. But general stuff, you can't push out a lot of media, a lot of images. It doesn't work. So yeah, so that needs a lot of thought.
Yeah.
So that kind of is drawing me to the conclusion that we're coming together with the discussion around open and bringing into that people who have, for a long time, tried to encourage practitioners to think about accessibility, to think about the tools that they use, but often practitioners don't get much of a choice around the tools that they use. I was really interested, Suzanne, to hear you mention values, because that was a topic that we focused on in a recent webinar. So I think we've got a good sort of base to jump from there. Values are critical, but really interested as well to see that you're bringing together this social justice agenda, which is clearly very important, and this idea really that we need to think more about, rather than a community of open, just a fairer society in general, a fairer world, and how we can perhaps be more inclusive by talking around in those spaces.
Yeah, and I think there are so many parallels to the early days of the open movement, where you might have felt like you were plowing new ground, and the importance of being a role model and starting difficult conversations in one's institution or wherever you're based. It's there's a parallel to that now. Now that we're not in the magical thinking days anymore, but asking those difficult questions around challenging global north epistemologies of knowledge, that Leo was talking about, and the access issues and all those things. So if we are putting ourselves on that ledge of that risky place to be in our respective institutions, we need to support one another and have conversations just like this, and share information and kind of prop one another up to be able to do that work. And it is very similar to the early days of the open movement when we did that for other reasons. But I think we're heading into a difficult period. We're in it, but there are difficult days ahead.
You couldn't be more right. I mean, it's getting harder than ever, and there's a lot of suspicion, I think, around openness and what's going to happen. One of the things I found with my own community, because I went to the Eurocall conference in Finland over the summer, and the sort of I'm a linguist, and so the languages, particularly the area that I work in, was that there was a lack of granularity in discussions around what open means. So there were a lot of, and I'm sure you'll be aware of this in the work that you've done, Catherine and Leo, already, that there are a lot of preconceptions that open means free, or there's a level of lack of engagement with the ideas and the philosophy behind open, even the social justice agendas, because with austerity pressing against us, we have people desperate for budget and people who are stuck labouring away without any funding, and they see open as a threat in some respects. I wonder if we may have to help deal with that.
I think picking up a little bit on that point, one of the really interesting things to me about this project that's been happening, that's led to this conference, has been this discussion of learning on and with the open web, and it's been skirting around the edge of that question of what do we even mean by the open web. And I think that's a really interesting one, because maybe it means doing things openly on the web, and maybe it also is about what is an open web as opposed to the commercial web, because you can kind of do things openly on the commercial web, and as we all know, we've all become a bit less carefree, a bit more disillusioned about our dealings with some of those platforms and those those data extraction machines and all of that. So. And I think that surfaced quite a bit today, that sort of question around, it's not just about doing things openly, but really thinking about the tools that we use and the ethics of those tools, which I think has been really valuable. And there's been a lot of Splots, yes, as a shining example of ethical tools.
Gotta love a Splot.
Yeah, so this actually leads into a question we got on Twitter from Caroline Kuhn. I'm not sure if that's how you say her name.
That's it.
But she was just mentioning how important the term open is still needed, because of these discussions about data and the fact that there are a lot of students coming up who haven't had these discussions yet. And so open is needed as a way to talk about the ways that your data is accessed or used. So I was just wondering if anyone had anything to add or talk about there.
Yeah, the question of data and it's
just the riskiness.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things, maybe Sam has something more specific to say about data, but one of the things we were talking about in our workshop was just the way in which we have. It's important to give students choices in terms of the identity. Is this what you're thinking of, Catherine? Like the identity they take on in a learning context on the open web. So I mentioned, Alan, the kind of hypertext set of choices that students in NetNow went through in order to design their presence on the web and what kinds of accounts they were building and whether they were going to choose avatars and sort of veiled identities, or if they wanted to step into a more literal sense of who they are in, like, you know, at Mia Zamora versus at Sonic Hedgehog or something like this. You know, what those choices are about and in what moments they can switch their identities, etc. So that was one aspect of it. But I think, Sam, you had something in mind about data too?
Yes, yeah. It's interesting that I've just been in a workshop about Wikidata, and he's saying that actually as editors, a lot of people will pick pseudonyms, and a lot of female editors will pick pseudonyms just because the amount of crap you get as a female editing anything on the web. But yeah, it's something, data and how data gets used and how it gets matched. And even when you think you've not given away stuff, you've given away quite a bit. It's something I think just people across the board do not understand, which is why the Playground Project exists. It's something that I'm working with Anne-Marie Scott from Edinburgh. You know, we're pitching at young adults, you know, so they get this and it becomes part of their citizenship almost. Although actually, interestingly, there's a citizen science group that have changed the word citizen to community science because of the whole issue around immigration and status in the UK right now. So they've changed it to community science, and people don't feel excluded because citizen right now is
it's a loaded word.
It's a very loaded word, but yeah, I mean, there is a lot of concern about that and the identities that people build and what you don't think you created. So you have multiple identities. You do it by your regional footprint, and actually, I think when you see that footprint and the data that people have on you, that's terrifying. The digital detox kit allows you to kind of go in, and it shows you how to go to Facebook and see what they've got. The map that Google has of your movements, if you stay logged into Google, you know, if you ever want to know all the cities you've been to, Google will kindly tell you, and they use that. I won't say against you, but it's, you know, you are their product and they sell it on beautifully. But yeah, I think there is just stuff around data in general that people just are not savvy about. And there's a very funny, and how data's hidden too. So there's a great little video on YouTube called bar plots that some scientists did. And like how you visualize the data. Actually, it hid a whole load of detail about that data. And it's very, very funny. But yeah, there's a whole load of stuff about that. And yeah, misuse of data. So with analytics, you talk about predictive analytics. If you don't take the BME attainment gap into account, you're going to be predicting students potentially 15 percentage points less than what they should truly get. And then you start intervening on things that you shouldn't be. It's scary, yeah. So probably not a clear answer, but there's a whole massive extra can of worms.
Just something, what I felt in this conference is that today, something that was missing, I think the student voice was missing, have been missing a little bit. You know, it's not this, the conference isn't designed for students, of course, but a lot of the discussions are about using the open for instructional purposes. So the students' role in that wasn't very clear in some of the sessions. So I think maybe we need to have more conversations on that. Like, what does open mean for our students in their own voice? Because they might have a very different perspective than us. So maybe going forward, we need to think about that more.
That's a really good point, and I've certainly been aware that we often don't give the students enough agency in this discussion, but that's possibly because we all start from the premise that they are the students. Mm-hmm. And actually, sort of looking around us, I see practitioners who are students.
Right.
You know, and we inhabit those roles for a short while and then we move on. So, but how do we encourage them to actually be part of the formation, if you like, of how we do stuff? And for this, I look to my sons, who are both in their 20s, because you know I'm way past it, and see how they despair when they see the sort of leadership that's coming from governments around the internet, because they say, well, they don't know anything about it. You know, they call Facebook in and they interrogate them, but they ask stupid questions because they really have no idea what they're talking about. And somehow we need to move and make space for those people who have inhabited the internet since they were very, very young, and increasingly they're getting younger and younger when they start using a tablet or whatever, to claim their voice in shaping where we go next and where we make the next web.
To pick up on Suzanne's remarks, this is quite old, but when I was at Mary Washington, when they were first starting Domain of One's Own, I remember students in this session talking about their experience, and it didn't make sense or wasn't clear to them what they could do with their web space until they had some meaningful experiences in their classes. And not to say that was a requirement, but it's like, here's your domain, go and do something with it.
Yeah.
Doesn't really do anything. But they had connective learning experiences in their classes, and then not just one class, that I think they were saying, then it made sense for them later on to consider what they're going to do with their own interest. Not the thing. And then I also wanted to throw in response, I get from what Catherine was saying about sort of not the demise of open, but it was open for the sake of openness. I mean, you just say it's open, and yeah, it's good to be open, and that's going to be enough of a rallying cry. And yeah, that doesn't stand up anymore. And so again, you've got to have a purpose. But like many others, when I taught my students in NetNow last year, yeah, they're totally unaware of a lot of the surveillance and the data. But I don't think that's the full answer either, because I don't think like openness because you're being creeped and surveilled and monitored. It's important to know that, but I think they also need to get what do they get out of openness? What's the virtue and what's the gain? And so we got to throw that into the mix too.
For sure, yeah.
And also, sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Just to throw one thought in, maybe, or two thoughts maybe. So I don't think there's, and I'm sure most people would agree, that there's no such thing as these students. Like there are plenty of diverse people who are studying in higher ed and elsewhere. And they all will need different formats and shapes and forms of participation, inclusion, however you want to call it. And I'm becoming a bit wary in the German context, at least, when I am at educational conferences and people say we need more student voices, because these students who would actually make it to a 2-day event in Berlin, for example, are not particularly the student voices that I would most care about.
Yeah.
Not saying that they like. And I think that calls for different formats of participation, of questioning, of practices, of many things. And I think also of the way that we, and I don't even know who the we is there, discuss what education is and who education is for. And I'm just uncomfortable to watch those conferences and have this mantra of, we need more students here. Yeah. Maybe next year.
I think so. With my comment, I didn't mean inviting students to our spaces. You know, I meant just bringing them more into the discussion, which could happen in the classrooms, and which could happen with your children. It has many different forms, of course, but I think we tend to be quite self-absorbed. Everything revolves around instruction. So yeah, just a reaction to that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put it that way. Sorry about that.
No, I think that's a really good point from someone who likes to include student voice, but what that means, voices, and how varied that can be. I think another thing to think about, or I'm thinking a lot about lately, is when we do have conversations about a student's role in open as they're learning or doing other things, recognizing what their identity has to do with that, and what privileges either come along with that, or what marginalization comes along with their identity in that open space. And so I think if all students are thinking about that, no matter what, I think that's a really important piece that I keep trying to bring in as part of the conversation. And I'm guessing that, Mia and Catherine and Maha's work in the Unbound thing probably has a lot to do with that as well. I haven't gotten to dig in a lot, but would love to hear more about that.
I love hearing you say that, Sunday, and just thinking too of the words that have come up in so many conversations today, just in all the various conversations over coffee and in workshops and so on, have been politics, just the kinds of things to talk about, and policy. And, just this notion of, policy is such a dry word, but, we are the people who should be pushing policy that supports, students and staff and learning at our institutions, and making sure that student voice is there, and that the processes by which we discuss and generate those policies are themselves kind of democratic and open. And I think we are the people that really need to fight for that, because we understand, we and our students, like Alan was saying, we've been engaged in this now, so we understand all those glossy, lovely benefits, and we understand a lot of the risks. So if we don't want it to be the people who don't really understand the issues generating the policy, then we need to find our way inside those rooms and around those tables. And as I said, really fight for, healthy processes around that, not just the policies themselves. So yeah, I just definitely, I just love what, how you express that.
I think another important point is that Mia talked about connected learning this morning, which was really interesting, because at one point I think you said something like, if as a teacher you're trying to direct everything in the environment, in a network environment, then you don't understand network learning in the first place. I really like that, and I think just having that understanding can change a lot of things and can open up spaces for students to just flourish, basically, build networks and so on.
I kind of was thinking about this a little further after you highlighted that comment in the Twitter chat, and I was thinking it's a little bit like having a child and then letting go slowly over time, and finding the faith that what was born into this world will surprise you and teach you as much as you're there to guide them. So it's a little bit like that metaphor, maternal metaphor, is that, in every community or network, we hope to seed. There will be things we don't realize, and that is the nature of the very thing we're trying to do.
This is really, really helpful. I don't know whether I feel a bit guilty now that I've been able to sort of milk you for ideas and get lots and lots of info to inspire what we're going to do next. But one of the things,
one favor.
Of course.
You and I and a few other people have contributed to an open Google Doc, which is
that's right.
Just the open education's national special interest groups, or even regional special interest groups that we know of. So maybe you might just share that link, because some other people in this hangout particularly might be willing to contribute to that. It's only partial knowledge what we have. Your SIG is on it, the Open Ed SIG. Ireland is just starting one, Open Ed IE. Fabio started Italy, Australia, but I know there are more, and it'd be great to collect that information.
I will try and find that. I think it may have been. Oops.
Thank you, Teresa.
I'll try and track that down. Here we go. I think, yeah, I found it. Oh, don't you just love Google? It's much better than my memory.
No, we hate Google.
Well, yeah. I hate it in the way that I'm dependent on coffee and everything else.
I know what you mean.
I know I shouldn't love it, but I do.
I don't know about anybody else. Is anybody kind of disillusioned with government and institutions?
Don't get me started.
Anyone hanging on to their mental health with a fine thread every day.
But you know,
only every hour of the day.
We also have a lot of faith in like large social media and groups to do things for us. And I think stuff happens at this virtual hangout. The class that Mia and Maha and Catherine are teaching, it's an individual effort, and I think I'd like to do as much for people to like have the understanding and ability to do this kind of building instead of relying on institutions. Not that institutions are bad. I'm not like a burn the institution person, but they don't move, and they're not moving, and they haven't moved for as long as I've been part of one. And so, and yeah, be part of an institution, but I think this stuff is as important. And I'm not waiting for an institution or a government to like fix things. I'm trying to do it myself.
That's such good advice, because you could wait forever and nothing's going to happen, guys. We have to grab what agency we have and move things. And one of the things I've become really aware of, perhaps because over the summer I did a Creative Commons accreditation course, and I thought that would be really dry and boring, but it was actually really good and very interesting. Was that I've suddenly become aware of all these copyright extensions that are going on. So now, you know, the UK and the US music industry and everybody other just pushing back the limits of copyright further and further. And we have to say, no, we have to stop this. Our commons are shrinking constantly, and we depend on the commons. So I think there has to be somewhere here where we advocate for commons, for the commons and the common good, and you know, the importance of things that don't belong or aren't owned by any one person.
I so agree with you, Teresa. I just think that we can tend to get very focused on the idea that we're doing a really fantastic thing by putting a Creative Commons license on a particular resource, and not really think about the bigger picture of that. Such a tiny drop in the ocean of all of the resources and information and knowledge that's out there, and so much of that is copyright, and as you say, they're constantly encroaching, making the copyright last longer and longer. And yeah, this is two sides of the same coin that we need to be kind of fighting both battles.
So in the States, they famously tweaked the law for Disney to keep rights on Mickey Mouse. They tweaked the copyright. They tweaked it because it was the original was going to fall into 90.
Yeah,
it was going to fall into Commons, and
they power politics, baby.
They made sure that would
right. Yeah, they made sure that would happen. Yeah.
And that's happening right now in the UK on music as well.
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting topic, music as well. Yeah.
But also in terms of what changes and what doesn't, I feel that sometimes, and a colleague of mine at Wikimedia says that, who does lots of policy work around copyright. A day or a week or a month where nothing changes is actually a good one, because that's what the fight is about now. So just to keep it the way it is, and just to like narrow it in. And I think we often forget that as well, that on the one hand, things might be changing for worse in institutions or with copyright or whatever it is, but I don't think that should make you feel powerless. That should just give you a sense of that we need more people like that. Who fight that fight, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing a bad job. It's just not that we're not strong enough yet.
Weirdly, this takes me back to, you've not seen it yet, So this Saturday in the UK was the Doctor Who episode with Rosa Parks, and it was one small action on a bus that triggered a protest that helped trigger a major social rights movement. So it's that one small act.
Oh,
That's
the issue.
That's the issue. It's that one thing, that one person that sparks the fire, that you just keep going, that one act of defiance.
I have to give you credit there for getting Doctor Who into an online conversation.
There's currently a big billboard of the new Doctor just a block away from here, and I'm not leaving Coventry until we get a selfie in front of the Doctor, the new Doctor. But I will say that's fascinating, because we all know that work that matters is work that comes in a surge of so many people working together, and not just the bravery of one hero alone. And this is interesting that the narrativization of history and activism always sort of is easily formulated around a superstar. That's interesting.
She was having tea with like Martin Luther King and some other people.
Oh, okay.
But it was kind of, it was just that spark.
The spark was the
spark.
idea. Yeah, the spark.
It's the spark.
Yeah, well,
and then
it comes in a particular point in history, doesn't it? So it's a combination of things coming together. It's the butterfly wings, but you've got to have
there's the great bit in the prison film where he ends up
Green. No,
the Green Mile.
Yeah, okay.
Shawshank. Where it's the rock hammer, and when he sees it, it's like he's not going to escape with it. And he ends up escaping with the rock hammer, because day by day he takes a tiny little change out of the wall from something that's
Yeah, that's an interesting, perhaps we have to close because there's sessions going on, but I'll say it's a really good note to close on, because one of the themes I feel I'm taking away from this experience today is the sense of a kind of like a more explicit politicization of the work, but not in the sense of we're going to sweepingly be able to fight one thing at one time, but rather that the work is like sowing seeds, and that they'll grow and germinate in a variety of places.
We're running around with a fire blanket.
Well, we've got fire blankets, but we're also sowing seeds, because the students will sort of take on a lot of the work that we're trying to share, and then also have ideas about how to address things. So that's a hopeful thing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's an excellent way to end. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it. We do sometimes, we're the only person on our campus, or we're a small group, but when you get together with a group like this, you just get that extra energy. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to see you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
See you.